been a child between 1860 and 1915, the gifts under your Christmas tree would be quite a bit different than those that children get today. And yet in many ways, they're very much the same. So let's take a look at some of the things that children might have gotten under the Christmas tree, whether they were wealthy families or very frugal families, back in the early 1900s and the late 1800s. Puzzles were very popular then, and so here, in a lovely little wooden box, once again with gorgeous designs on the box and beautiful lithography, you open up your box and you have puzzle blocks. So here are your puzzle blocks. Of course, you're going to get 6 different puzzles, and hopefully they will include the images so that you will know how to put your puzzles together. And these would be great for boys or girls, different complexities for different ages. I'm just crazy about all the wonderful decor on these boxes, which you remember that children didn't have access to what today's children do. They had to use their imagination, and it really helped to have something as gorgeous as the simplest wooden box to be decorated in such a beautiful way. This section, this little set of box, this is probably really a pretty old set, and I'm thinking that because of the printing on this, which looks more like etching, and you can see the design of the woman's clothing, this probably was a pretty early set before chromolithography came in, and the little leather box is actually, the little wooden box is actually covered with leather. So these would have been a wonderful toy back in the day. If you were the child of wealthy parents in 1860, you might have been lucky enough to have a Griner doll. This is a rather large-sized doll. You can see by the hairdo. She's wearing a Civil War style hairdo. Her clothing is wonderful. She's got funny little leather hands, stitched leather hands. Her body is filled with sawdust. Now perhaps you didn't come from that wealthy of a family, and out of a catalog, your parents could still get you a very lovely bisque doll, such as these. These might have cost around $2, which was a pretty penny back in the day. And maybe you could have a shoe-fly horse. The little rocking horse. You'd have to be a very small child to fit into this one. This would be for around a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old to fit into that rocking horse. Well, let's say you came from a family that wasn't wealthy and they had to be very frugal, but you had a little girl, and she needed a dolly too. You could buy a wooden penny doll. This little doll is made completely of wood. She's got jointed arms, and she's got jointed knees and hips. Her little head is painted. Her stockings and shoes are painted on her body, but all that you would purchase would be the little wooden doll itself. She wouldn't have any clothing on. These would be in a basket, just at the general store or at the toy store, called wooden pennies. Now, the mother or the grandmother would have to stitch the clothing, and as you can see on this dress, Mother was a wonderful seamstress. The stitches are absolutely minute. The style of the dress is just wonderful. The pattern of the cloth, the hem. Back in those days, of course, you had to know how to stitch. Almost all women could sew if they were of the working class. And so any little girl would have loved to have this beautiful little wooden penny doll under the Christmas tree. Her clothing makes me believe that she's probably a Civil War period, just because of the style of her dress and the plaid pattern. Boy from a family that didn't have a whole lot could have a spinning top, a rubber ball, another spinning top, a water pistol, or a small mechanical soldier who, when you press this little lever here, he's supposed to go whizzing across the room. Let's see if he still works. Well, he does. After 100 years, he still works. Look at that. Board games, puzzles, art sets, printing sets, all were very popular and very available for low prices. Lotto games. Lotto seems to have been a very popular game, and I think it was very much like bingo. And another popular game, Tiddlywinks. Very popular in this era we're speaking of was the game of jackstraws. This one was made by Parker Brothers, and they began making games in 1885. Milton Bradley started making games, board games, in the 1860s. So this is probably a pretty old set of jackstraws. When a child would get a box of jackstraws for Christmas, they not only got a fun game, they got a beautiful box to go with it. I love the care that was taken to create beautiful graphics on each one of these boxes. So what exactly is the game of jackstraws? Well, let's open up a box and find out. Here we have the early version of jackstraws, and it looks like just a lot of little sticks and a box of directions, but you will notice that the sticks are of different shapes. They're very lightweight, probably made of balsa wood. So we'll open another box of jackstraws. A little more recent edition. And what a child would find when they opened the box were all these wonderful little objects. There was a little hook and totally different objects such as a scythe, a shovel, a masher, a hoe, and each little item had a number on it. Leave this one is number 8, an axe, all sorts of cute little things are in here. Here's a mallet, and I think we have a little rake right here. Yes, there's a little rake. But what on earth did you do with these little things? Well, I guess what we need, and what they would need, would be a box of directions. So in one of these boxes, and this would be Parker Brothers, inside of this box is, well, a wonderful box filled with the directions on how to play this game. And it's really quite simple. You hold the straws in one hand, points down an inch or two above the table, and then drop them suddenly. They will fall in an irregular heap. The players then in turn endeavor to remove them, one at a time, with the wire, in such a way so as not to move or in the least disturb any of the others. If a player moves another straw besides the one he is trying to pick off, the turn passes to the next, and so on and so on. I believe this was the first edition of what we know as pickup sticks. So let's give it a try. We're going to take a couple of these. And our little kids, drop them in a pile. And now let's see how easy it would have been for them to pick these up. So you can't move anything except the one you're trying to retrieve. Oops, see, already. You know what? It's not as easy as it looks. You have to use a very delicate touch. Let's see, I'm going to try one more. Ooh, almost. All right. I believe I moved another stick. So it was a rather challenging little game. I guess it was a good way to practice your patience and your steadiness. And I am sure that a little game like this could keep children occupied for hours and hours. They could play this by themselves. They could also play it with another group of children. But here we have the more modernized version of jackstraws. And this one was a Milton Bradley. You can usually tell the age of these by just looking at the clothing of the people in the lithographs. This looks like around 1890s, according to this woman's outfit, if you can make that out. But this is magnetic jackstraws. So the jackstraws were made of metal. I imagine this little set would cost a little bit more. And your pickups were, here they are, magnets. I don't know if these still work. Just barely. Probably as popular now as they were when they were created back in the early 1900s, inspired by Theodore Roosevelt, supposedly. You could get a teddy bear for as little as 29 cents. What little girl in the early 1900s wouldn't want a dollhouse? And this particular dollhouse sold for $1 to $3 from the catalog, and this was called a Bliss dollhouse. Bliss dollhouses look so colorful and vibrant, but actually they're covered in paper. Beautiful patterns and bricks and woodwork and clapboards, spindles, all made with paper. And inside the house, by opening the front door, I should say the entire facade, were very tiny rooms. But the furniture could be made by cutting out the little forms of stoves, couches, chairs, and tables from heavy-duty paper. They were folded up and put inside the rooms. This one has a few cobwebs on it. I think I need to dust this a little more often. Here's another one. This one's a little more simple, and it was probably about 50 cents. But what's so lovely about it are the interiors. Here. There's a little couch in the making. Books, 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 beautiful books to stir the imagination and bring delight through the illustrations. Books were a lot more popular back then. That's what they had for their entertainment. I know parents still buy books for their children, thank goodness, but not nearly as much as they did 100 years ago. Funny mechanical toys that hop and walk and clang their tambourines. At the turn of the century, the desire for something that gave you speed, something you could ride, something with wheels, hasn't changed much to this very day. The only difference being the mode of transportation. Of course, the steed of choice would be a horse. And there were so many choices in horse toys, little horse toys on wheels, starting at 15 cents and going up to as much as $3.50. Some with wonderful little metal wheels and carts and moving legs. These were made of wood with lithographed details. This one is a heavy cardboard made with metal wheels and a heavy cardboard where the lithographed horse is actually stamped onto the cardboard. It's a pretty thick cardboard, but that's not what's special about this particular toy. This is a cart, and this cart actually does something. Wow, look at that. These little horses actually held up pretty well. This one has little cardboard wheels on a little wooden platform, and he's made of paper mache with wooden legs. His tail is actually horsehair, and considering the fact that this horse was probably played with pretty roughly, in fact it's lost its ears, and it's sort of split down the middle, but I'd say that this toy is over 120 years old. So they really were made to be handled and played with. Here's a horse you could actually ride, because it would have had a stick right there, and it would have been a hobby horse. So somebody actually had to get on this horsey and give it a good gallop. This is also paper mache, probably over 100 years old. It had at one time a wonderful leather bridle. It's still part of it's there. Here are the reins. Somebody could really get up and go on this baby. Not very common would be a donkey. A wonderful little donkey with wooden wheels and plush. I think he's got a real mane. I think even a little girl would love to have played with this. And here, another little horse, probably cost about 39 cents at the time. Little metal wheels, covered with some kind of fabric. Actually, it almost feels like it's real horsehair. It's a little worn. It's quite worn. The bridle's missing. It's still got its little glass eyes. But this toy was loved and played with, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if somebody got this for Christmas in about 1915. This one, wow, you could load up this wagon and take it somewhere with these wonderful little horses that are lithographed on wood. Their legs actually move back and forth when the wheels move. So this would have been a great toy. Fill it with your little toy soldiers, and off you go. And here we have the finest steed in the stable. This one is much bigger. I think it's actually covered with some kind of calf skin, and it was stitched. You can see the stitching on the legs. It was stitched over a wooden frame, carved hooves, nice platform, great cast iron wheels, and glass eyes, an actual horsehair mane and tail. And this must have been an Appaloosa at one time. You can still see some of its spots. And I'm sure that this horse at one time had a saddle, reins, and everything else that a little boy would have wanted for a real horse. You know, to tide him over until he got the real thing. It's little sheep on wheels as well. There they are, those tiny little wooden wheels. Also made with sheep's wool, wooden legs, and a papier-mâché face, glass eyes. This probably would have been something either a small child or a little girl would have liked to play with. And I actually found this one in the catalog right here. there is that same little sheep, and you could get a dozen of those for $2.04, which I'm assuming was the wholesale price, but that still makes it a very inexpensive toy. Of course, that's according to our current day prices, but back then, even 20 cents could have been a lot of money for certain families. And sometimes families couldn't afford these toys at all. And so what would you get? Maybe you would get a tangerine in your stocking, and a handful of walnuts, and a candy cane. And you know what? Sometimes that's good enough.